Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Monday, October 24th, 2016, and it appears we will be forced to go forward with this thing after all. Get the president on the line. We may have to go through with this thing after all. Who remembers? Okay, well, another movie quote. It's usually the same movie over and over anyway. You'll recall War Games. Daily Co's Radio is live now. Bill reminds us all the way from Portland, Maine. Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, is now at the Days Are All Running Together stage, so this will be fun. Yeah, I mean, we're very nearly at downfall parody stage at this point. Okay, I have better hopes, of course, for the outcome of the election, but I'm ready for this to be over and done with, and it's still a couple of weeks away, so we'll plod along and get to the end of the week, and next Monday it'll be Halloween, so we'll do a special Halloween show, by which I mean one of these. And we'll likely do this whole thing all over again, and there won't be much different. By Tuesday, we'll be in a candy coma, but again, that's still a week away. I know Bill has like a particular thing for candy corn, right? So I imagine pretty soon diabetes sets in, and we all go out and get special socks, and it's a big party. Okay. Well, we are, like I said, back on the air. Last week, it turned out not so bad, right? A little disruption here at home. I don't think I actually updated you all on the very important news of what was going on. Youngest son home in concussion recovery protocols. I wish there was a cooler story for this. The two kids, both relatively advanced martial artists, as it happens, but no, not a cool story like got kicked in the head in a sparring match. Dumb thing happened at school. Friend of his kicked actually a basketball, not a soccer ball, at him while he was sitting, eating his lunch and sitting up against the wall. I think I did start to discuss some of this last week. Anyway, he got clocked in the head and hit his back of his head against the brick wall of the school, and man, do they have all kinds of concussion protocols these days, which is great. And it actually kind of helped. I mean, it psyched him out quite a bit, too. But the kids have been hearing for a while now, kids who follow sports, oh my God, concussions, terrible, it's going to kill you. So it was good to have a real protocol for them to follow and some actual advice like, okay, well, the thing you're worried about would be recurring concussions or playing through a concussion and not taking care of it. But boy, this whole thing bored him stiff. So no screen time, no reading, no homework he was happy about, but not so happy about just sitting there and doing nothing. A lot of naps taken, though. That was pretty good. He rediscovered the joy of nap taking, which at 11 is difficult to get kids to recognize. But okay, well, we're back on our regular school schedule, so that won't get in the way of anything. This year, first year of middle school for him, and I also now discover he continues to want me to walk with him in the morning, which is nice. Remember, I was thinking I was sad I was going to miss walking him to his elementary school. Wants me to walk him to the bus. I don't know how long that's going to last, really. But I'm thinking that with winter is coming, as they say on the TV show. I guess I have to discuss with him whether or not on 2-hour delay days, whether he's just going to have to walk on his own. Because I'm sure Greg is getting tired of coming in and substituting for those awkward pauses in the middle of the show where I have to go and walk everybody to school. I'm kind of looking forward to not having to go out in the snow for that stuff and not have to interrupt the show. So, where does the weekend leave us? Where were we when we were talking things over? I discovered over the weekend the extent to which Donald Trump cheats at golf. This is not a news story, and lots of people send me lots of links to old stories about people reporting that he cheated at golf, and that's definitely true, but I'll have to take you through some of the specifics of exactly what or how his cheating manifests itself, just to give you a fuller picture of it, because it's extremely important that you know this. Presidents, as you know, very often play golf. I don't think Hillary Clinton is a golfer. I've never seen that. But if the press corps, as I understand it, has to follow the president pretty much everywhere and will follow them through an entire round of golf, that may be a bigger embarrassment than releasing his tax returns. He doesn't want to do that, but to have the press be able to observe how he actually plays after all the bragging he's done might be his undoing. He may be very happy not to win the presidency. Let's check up on how he's doing not winning the presidency by talking to Greg Dworkin, calling in from Connecticut. Good morning, Greg.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm happy, I guess. We'll call it. It's looking good. It looks like a good week. I always feel that way on Monday, despite the doom and gloom. But and it's nice to get back on the radio and vent a little bit. But by Friday, I'll be worn down.
Yeah, true enough. I don't know if you caught the little clips or even the actual show with Tiger Woods on Colbert talking about presidential golfing.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't.
Just a nice little segue from your intro. So he was asked about individual presidents he's played with and what about their game.
Yeah.
And, he would use one or two word answers for each one. HW was fast, and the word he used for Bill Clinton was cut.
Cut.
Yeah, I don't know if that meant he always sliced left to right or, or he cut corners on as Colbert asked him on the score. Yeah. But he said just cut.
Cut. Oh.
Was asked about W. He said, I never played with W. And he was asked about Trump, and he looked at Colbert and said, I thought you said we were talking about presidents.
Okay. Fair enough. He's probably right.
Which is about where the ABC tracking poll that just came out yesterday for the first time this election puts him. It's a supplement to the major ABC polls. I can't tell from the write-up whether they're actually going to post every day. There's nothing more annoying than a daily tracking poll that does not post every day.
Yeah.
The NOLA one, for example, the poll in the Times-Picayune has nice numbers for Clinton. She runs 7 to 10 points ahead of Trump, but they don't post on weekends. UPI, C-Voter, claims to have a daily tracking poll, but they randomly decide to post. They have one this morning where Clinton's up by 3. Not a particularly good poll, but there it is. The LA Times poll at least has the virtue of actually being a tracker that posts every day. And by the way, today they're tied. Maybe Clinton has a slight, 2-point lead or a 0.2 point lead to the point where you can't use it in the Trump narrative saying, hey, we're ahead. Look at the LA Times poll. You're not ahead there anymore. And that's also true. I sent you a little graphic of Real Clear Politics. So you can just look at that because these are the ones that are oft cited by the Trump campaign. Actually, the LA Times has Clinton up by 1 today. And IBD Tip is tied. So those are 2 polls that Trump had been ahead on, still ahead on Rasmussen by 2. So that's a summary of the polls that you shouldn't pay attention to. Yeah, they're there. You can look at them.
Well, good.
The methodology is a little odd. But there are polls you could find, and if you want to add them to the average, they'll drag down Clinton's average. But if you're looking at high-quality live interviewer polling, there's really nothing out there better than NBC Wall Street Journal, which had her up by 11. And this new ABC poll, and they'll start partnering with the Washington Post a little bit later this week, has her up 50-38. They have her up 12 when prior to that they had her up by 4.
All right, well, that's not looking good.
It's a big jump. And you can see online the Reuters poll also. They don't post every day, even though they take data every day. And they jumped up from where they were. And I think they have her up by about 10. So what do we learn for the ABC tracker? Clinton's doubled her lead to 32 points among college-educated white women.
Okay.
62-30. Okay,
yeah.
And if you're going to ask about his sexual conduct, that is to say Trump's sexual conduct, 76% disapprove and 67% disapprove strongly. But she's also ahead with men.
Okay.
For the first time in this poll, she's ahead 44-41 with men. That's never happened in ABC post polling before.
Well,
and Trump is just 4 points ahead among whites overall. That's a group that Mitt Romney won by 20 points in 2012.
Yes. Well, he's white.
So he's got to do well with whites to win. And non-whites, they favor Clinton by 54 points, 68-14.
Is Donald Trump white, really, though?
No, he's orange.
Yeah,
and he's an Oompa Loompa. But
this
is
probably
the most significant part of the poll. The share of registered Republicans who are likely to vote is down 7 points since mid-October.
I don't know why I'm groaning about that, but okay.
So that's down ballot.
I feel bad for him? I don't know. No,
well,
I don't.
Forget about him. If those people don't show, that helps the Senate race and every close race that that's on the board. And down ballot is where it's at. Yep.
And every indication is, and they're just beginning to realize this, I think, in the Trump campaign now. Now they, of course, believe that it's a Clinton-Obama conspiracy to suppress his vote. Now they're actually worried about voter suppression, not just voter fraud. I don't know why that
because that's the only way that they could
now,
possibly be winning. You're familiar, I don't know how much we've spoken on the show about Bill Mitchell's Twitter feed.
Yeah, I've seen this guy, and I put aside an article on him because he's like the new sensation among, I guess really, he's getting the attention the unskewed polls guy got.
He's got a podcast like yours. It's called Your Voice TM Radio. Okay. And so I suppose he's real. Let me just read you. I sent over his actual Twitter feed toward the bottom of the list there, just so you could look. And let me give you some posts just from this morning, because this is performance art, and I guess he was up this morning. For example,
they all get up early.
Yeah. In 2012, Rasmussen had Romney +1, while everybody else had it tied or Obama +1, so Rasmussen wasn't way off. Hurricane Sandy skewed all the polling results. It literally saved Obama. According to pollsters, Hillary actually surged as a result of WikiLeaks and the O'Keefe tapes. Yeah, sure. Don't let media discourage you, Trump train. Don't let evil win. I encourage Trump supporters to go ahead and vote early. Don't leave anything to fate. Make your voice count. Here's a fact for anybody feeling discouraged by voting. If Hillary wins, we will never have another Republican POTUS ever, he says.
So he's talking to that because it's not discouraging at all to me.
Right? If Hillary wins, she will legalize and give voting rights to tens of millions of illegals. She'll kill conservative radio.
Ooh, good.
Right? Imagine that. Presidential races are closed now. If 20 million illegals get the right to vote, it's over.
Yes. By the way, nothing better for conservative radio than a Clinton win.
Right. Let's see. You notice how every media outlet is obsessing over the fake ABC poll with Hillary up 12, but nobody mentions IBD, Rasmussen, or PPD?
PPD. Why do you think no one knows that?
That's what you put on your arm to make sure you don't have tuberculosis. I have no idea what he's talking about with PPD.
No one has mentioned it. That's true.
Right. So anyway, that's Bill Mitchell. Now earlier in the week, he had this big thing. He's a great unskewer. Let me give you an example. Not only do pollsters oversample Democrats, they wildly oversample strong Democrats. That's why the whole thing is a scam.
Weightlifters.
Right?
Yeah.
As Pat Caddell said, if the electorate is really D +9, there won't be a Republican left standing. Right? Now, the LA Times poll, which had Trump up by 1 or 2 points, now has Clinton up by 1. So this morning he tweeted, the LA Times, being the liberal rag it is, likely feels under tremendous pressure to fall in line with other biased media polling. And most famously, he made a big thing about sales of Halloween masks.
Oh, yes. Right.
Right? That this year Halloween masks are favoring Trump, and that, like the scholastic vote for kids, always predicts who's going to win. Except this year, the sales are things, that are like joke masks, so you really can't tell, like Hillary in prison stripes, for example.
Yes.
So buying that doesn't mean you're voting for Hillary, for example. And the same thing is true with a Trump mask with a nasty women costume, that sort of thing. In any case, there's a really funny tweet that Nate Cohen sent. I have it at the very bottom of your Skype feed. I send David all my links so that he could read along with us.
Yes, and Scott
Nate Cohen for Upshot put together a graphic. Now, normally they have all the different predictors. New York Times, for example, 93% chance of Clinton winning the presidency, 538, 86%. These are all familiar to your listeners because we talk about it often. HuffPost at 96, PredictWise at 91, Sam Wang at 99, Daily Kos at 95, Charlie Cook, lean D, Stu Rothenberg, lean D, Larry Sabato, lean D, and then he's got a picture of Bill Mitchell, 99% Republican.
Yes. He's probably right.
And Nate Cohn had an addition there and said Clinton has an advantage in every model except Bill Mitchell's Halloween costumes indicator.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's certainly one of the worst indicators I've ever heard, and it is. If it's possible to win the presidency, ironically, then I guess
isn't there like a coffee mug sale at the?
Oh yes, 7-Eleven usually will have things like
yes,
that.
I don't even remember.
Buy a cup.
I haven't paid attention to that either.
Yeah, you can buy red cup, blue cup.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or at the Iowa State Fair,
right?
You could put the corn.
Yeah, if you can eat the butter cow whole in the side of an hour. I don't know. Yeah, there's always some kind of crazy indicator, lawn signs. And lots of people really do predict things that way.
Yep.
But, yeah, the Halloween costume one was a great laugh. You just never know why people are buying them for any reason. It doesn't even really indicate preference in Halloween costumes, really. I mean, the sales of Donald Trump masks are skyrocketing, along with sales of fake plastic poo sales, too. I don't know what that means, but people who track these things know that it's true. I have a feeling people are going to just put that on their heads when they're wearing the Trump masks, but I'm not positive what they're doing with it. I think this guy, I don't know how he's got a radio show, yes, but, I have a terrible radio show. How come I don't have that many followers? I don't understand. Okay, well,
people are following him just to see him melt down toward the end.
True.
That's,
Well, I will melt down at the end. I promise it. Oh wait, no, I do have more followers. Oh no, I don't. Okay, there we are. There's 107,000. Yeah, I have far fewer. Well, I could melt down. I'd be willing to melt for. I don't know what having 107,000 followers does for me. If I melt down, it's worse, I guess. All right. Well, never mind.
I mean, can you weaponize that?
I'm trying to find a way to make sense of all this, but, all right, so there he is. He's got a...
Yeah, here's his latest tweet. The reason emails, WikiLeaks, and O'Keefe are having no effect on Hillary is that her voters see her corruption as a benefit.
Yes.
I mean, you wouldn't know that unless you read that.
Right. It's a good thing he's out there doing these things. They're a wacky bunch, I must say. Speaking of the polling and the wiki emails, etc., the wiki email Ghazi Ben Gate.
Yeah.
Whatever.
McMuffin McBean.
Yeah. The new hotness is the oversampling. You mentioned the word. And I guess somebody found that in an internal email and doesn't understand what oversampling is at all. And they just think, oh, that means cheating. As oversampling is now the new deem and pass, I guess. Here's a word I don't really grasp, but it sounds like something is going wrong.
Yeah, it sounds scientific-y.
Yeah. So this is, they're oversampling. So they know they're asking too many Democrats. Of course, it actually means the opposite. But, they've grasped or latched on to this. And there's a wave of tweets from deplorables insisting they know what oversampling means. And it means cheating.
I'll send you one just to have at your fingertips here.
All right.
This one is from Zero Hedge.
That guy.
New Podesta email, it's Tyler Durden, who's kind of a funny guy to follow as well. New Podesta email exposes playbook for rigging polls through oversamples.
Yeah.
Problem is, of course, they don't really understand what it is that they said, but he says, earlier this morning we wrote about the obvious sampling bias. Of course, while Democrats may enjoy a slight registration advantage of a couple of points, it's nowhere near the 9 points reflected in the ABC News poll. Now, don't forget, listeners, that party ID is a variable, and people can choose to not want to call themselves Republicans if they happen to be associated with somebody like Donald Trump. So this is not at all unusual.
Yeah. This is, by the way, an amazing cartoon goes along with that thing.
Yeah,
most amazing of which is that Donald Trump appears fit in this, and that's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. Attached are state-by-state polling and research recommendations from the Atlas product that have been compiled into one document, says the actual email.
Okay.
I also want to get your Atlas folks to recommend oversamples for our polling before we start in February so we can maximize what we get out of our media polling.
Now, Atlas polling.
And that's from Tom Matzey. So the idea that you would oversample specific groups to find out what they think is a commonly done thing. You don't use it to skew the polls. You use it to get a better idea of small groups. So this is standard operating procedure, just as the rest of the WikiLeaks are actually standard operating procedure for campaigns.
True. That's been the overwhelming storyline.
And there's a good piece about that by Bill Scher.
Ignored it.
Happens to be in Real Clear Politics.
Okay.
I don't know where the original was, but why the WikiLeaks attacks fizzled.
Why?
Why?
They sucked.
Because the emails show the Clinton campaign team obsessively calculating political operatives. Some are privately rude to the populace on the left flank. Mm-hmm. They reveal transcripts of Clinton's private speeches suggesting she may hold some disingenuous positions in public. That's pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
Certainly Julian Assange thought so. In the alternative universe where Clinton runs against a generic Republican politician, the media might have turned the emails into a sensationalized feeding frenzy, a taste of which might have been seen in this report from The Hill about a May 21st, 2015 exchange. Top Clinton aide and leaked email. Can we survive not answering questions from the press? As you learn from a close reading, the headline is misleading. The aide proposed to Podesta not answering questions from press at message events. The proposal wasn't a media blackout. Moreover, Podesta's response was negative. She thinks we can get to Labor Day without taking press questions. I think that's suicidal. So, in fact, Clinton participated in a few press conferences that summer, but you don't learn that from The Hill, which instead offered, at one point, Clinton went 275 days without holding a formal press conference. And this is true in 2016. It was not true in the summer of 2015 when the email exchange took place. By the way, I would add, whatever controversy you're trying to gin up, it's really useful to blur the timelines and pretend that something that took place before another key event happened was somehow after, and therefore that's incriminatory.
Well, that's the whole email scandal in one sentence.
Exactly. But we don't live in an alternative universe. We live in a universe where WikiLeaks tried to take down a candidate with embarrassing private emails and failed. Clinton didn't suffer much from contextually challenged coverage like in The Hill because Trump hogged most of the negative coverage for himself. A firm believer in the no such thing as bad publicity school, Trump chose to rail against those accusing him of sexual assault, thereby ensuring tons of stories about Trump.
Yeah. There wasn't the bandwidth to cover these stories even if they were stories. Huh.
Right? So
that's a thought.
Clinton dodged a bullet, and to paraphrase The Wire, if you come at the Queen, you best not miss.
Yeah, let's not shoot everybody else in town anyway. Holy cow. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, we shouldn't have that kind of limited capacity at this stage, but and we don't. I mean, those coverage, the coverage was done, and it is out there. It's just nobody paid any attention to it.
It really didn't, because boring.
Yeah, compared to, what Trump was talking about.
It's routine campaign stuff, and there's nothing there. The truth is, he writes, if we saw the raw email from the Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, or Bernie Sanders campaigns, we would surely see similar political calculations over tricky issues, deliberations how to quash negative media narratives, intemperate comments made about adversaries or even allies, whereas the Trump campaign emails are probably in their own category of insanity.
Yes, I'm
What
sure.
we see in the Podesta emails is the grist of political life. It doesn't make our politicians fundamentally dishonest or our democracy a sham.
Sausage.
Yeah, it is. It's sausage being made. After seeing how the Clinton sausage got ground, he says,
there you go.
perhaps the voting public will now be more likely to view the contents of stolen emails through the prism of political reality. Without a truly scandalous bombshell, each subsequent cyber attack on Clinton's team or that of another politician may be greeted with bigger and bigger shrugs.
Could be.
And that's his opinion. So, actually, they came out. They weren't that interesting. Each one is more boring than the rest. And that's where we stand, says he.
Yeah, I tend to agree. A lot of people do. The idea that politicians practice politics, I can't get too excited about that. Yeah, it does tend to show that, the things are calculated. Yeah, I mean, if every move you make is scrutinized, and they should be, then you want to be careful about things as opposed to operating off the cuff and just saying, the hell with it. If it results in nuclear war, so much the better.
The emails from now on, somebody said we're doing everything by Snapchat.
Yeah. Okay. How secure is that?
I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, eventually.
Okay, let's look at North Carolina. Remember I mentioned that 7% Republicans say they're not going to vote compared to earlier in the cycle. So voting shows up in North Carolina. White Democrats are 10% ahead of their 2012 same-day numbers, while white unaffiliated voters are 30% ahead.
Oh.
Okay. Conversely, white Republicans are 15% behind their 2012 same-day numbers.
Okay.
Since Republicans tend to be an exclusively white party in North Carolina in terms of registration, 94% white, for example, the gap between 2012's performance by white Republicans and their current turnout indicates something is not motivating them to turn out, at least throughout the tea voting. 12, urban Democrats were 70% of the overall absentee voting, and in 2016, 18%. In 2012, urban unaffiliated voters were 13%, and in 2016, 15%. But in 2012, urban Republicans were 23% of the overall absentee voting, and now 19%. So while more urban Democrats and urban unaffiliated voters are showing up this year so far, then in comparison to the overall 2012 performance, it appears that urban Republicans are not casting absentee ballots at this point at the same potential rate as 2012. So if you're going to read tea leaves, Florida and North Carolina both have pretty interesting early vote numbers. Can't make too much out of it. You don't really know how they're voting. But if you break it down by men versus women, Democrats versus Republicans, none of it looks bad. And by the way, let me just throw in my favorite other, besides the Nate Cohen graphic about adding Bill Mitchell to the prognosticators. The other one was somebody tweeting around a Clinton rally, and it's actually, it looks like your typical grade school.
Okay.
Where the walls are tile so you could hose it down if things get really bad, and they have pictures of the standard bathrooms.
Okay.
And the men's room has a bad hombre sign, and the women's room has a nasty women's sign.
In the grade school, I hope they took that down before they left.
Yeah, they're colorfully hand painted, posterboard signs, but
all right,
it's kind of oak tag as we used to call it.
Yeah,
but they're fun.
Okay, that's a good one. I've seen they've had some interesting visuals coming out of those rallies the last couple of days.
Did you see the Boing Boing automatic alt-right conspiracy generator?
With the photos that just draws circles and arrows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just takes random photos and just draws circles and arrows around it, and then you can write your own conspiracy based on it.
That's good. I haven't used it, but I did see that it existed.
You just go to the site and they'll give you 3.
I was wondering how you make those things.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. So, for example, they have one of, I put it on the Pundit Roundup today, they have Donald Trump standing behind Hillary Clinton when he was stalking her during the Jaws debate.
Good shots.
And there's a guy in the audience behind them circled and says the lighting is wrong, pointing to some a piece of apparatus on Clinton with the question concealed. And then they added a note that said they used a D+37 sample in this poll. It's just all randomly generated. It's really funny.
Pretty good. I can see it now. Yeah, lighting wrong? Question mark. Yeah, you might as well just do it this way and don't bother filling much else in.
Right. By the way, if you've had difficulty with trolls on Twitter.
Okay.
There's a whole story about that in BuzzFeed.
Oh.
Entitled "A Honeypot for A-Holes: Inside Twitter's 10-Year Failure to Stop Harassment."
Please, I can't. Okay. All right.
It's just the whole concept that the people who invented Twitter got over there from Google to invent Twitter were, libertarian free speech advocates to the point where they just refused to even deal with a lot of the harassment there. And, of course, having them all be white males, not really sensitive to some of the, for example, Gamergate stuff that happens.
Yeah.
Didn't help either. But it's a really fascinating story about how they're trying to deal with this. and how badly they've dealt with it. So it's
where is that in the roundup? Where is that? Oh, there it is. Yeah, okay. See, I found it.
I have it in the pundit roundup.
Right above the howler monkeys.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite tweets. It's the louder the monkey, the smaller its balls, study finds.
Really?
And I'm going to use that tweet to answer trolls whenever they bother me. I'm just going to send them that.
Yeah.
Tweet.
Oh, I don't.
This applies to you.
I might not even send the link. Just the line. And
yeah.
Mine is study finds. Although that is kind of funny.
Yeah, it's kind of good.
Don't want to do that study.
There's a piece about David French,
know.
Who briefly thought of running as
yes.
a Evan McMullen third party, fourth party kind of
right.
person.
Oh, Evan McMullen v 1.0.
Yeah. Trump's alt-right trolls has subjected me and my family to an unending torrent of abuse I wouldn't wish on anybody, and he goes and he catalogs it over at National Review Online, which is kind of interesting.
I have a catalog of people I would wish it on. But
sure.
Okay.
I have a basket. And then James Ball has a piece in BuzzFeed about working with Julian Assange briefly, and talks about getting it through his head and what it's like.
Okay.
And he talks specifically about why he hates Clinton so much. So it's kind of interesting piece there, if that's your thing. Yeah. And that's really my summary for today. That's what I have. I think there's a lot of resignation that set in with the Republicans over the weekend about, hey, you know what? He's really not going to win.
Well, let's
and
have
I think
more
we're going to see the fallout of that all week. And we still haven't had the big bombshell, one last thing of Oppo to drop, which people have hinted at but haven't, hasn't happened yet in terms of Trump. So that'll be interesting to see if it ever does.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see on that. There's not that much time left. Interesting. I'd like to read a little bit more. I'm not up to speed entirely on WikiLeaks. They've been around forever, and I've just never really bothered to find out what they were about. But it's becoming inevitable here. I was thinking about them last night and thinking, watching people like Sean Hannity and other ultra right-wing people saying, "Thank God for Julian Assange and WikiLeaks." And I remember this
stealing
much.
material because we're into that sort of thing. We always have been, right?
Right. I remember at least this much. It wasn't long ago when it was Chelsea Manning turning over the material to WikiLeaks that they wanted to execute them all, bomb wherever the hell, the Ecuadorian embassy in London, kill Julian Assange I thought was the battle cry then. And now of course he's a hero. I wasn't too wild about the Manning part either, but this is WikiLeaks. I get the idea, but man, I guess the message here is there's nuance to classification as well, and privacy, and maybe we're just not really either ready for or all that clear on what to do with 100% transparency. I don't think anybody's ready for that life just yet.
Right. And last comment, just as people are aware, Tom Hayden has died at age 76.
Yeah, that was
60s radical of note if you happen to be of a certain age.
Yes, and if you're of less than that age, Wikipedia will tell you he was a 60s radical of note.
Yeah.
So there you are. Look him up.
There you are. All right, and with that, that's my segment for this morning. This is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman, Kagro in the morning on this fresh week, week of 10/24, 2016. Tomorrow we'll make it 2 weeks before the election, and it'd be nice to have that over with. But in the meantime, you can listen to Kagro in the morning, and it'll keep you sane. He's got an hour and a half or so of material, and who knows what he's going to say, because goodness knows he doesn't know. And we'll all listen and we'll find out. Take care, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. All
right, very good. Thank you, Greg. A great start. Ready to explore some of these themes. So it is a while until Election Day. They made it, of course, for Trump as long as possible. Because next Tuesday is the first Tuesday in November. But it's too soon in November. The rule is that it's the first Tuesday in November, unless the first Tuesday in November is like November 1st, because that's too close, and people don't have calendars, and they'll wake up and they'll be like, what a beautiful October morning, and late October at that, October 32nd, the day after Halloween, my favorite All Souls Day, as we all know, and I don't know why people think that we couldn't keep track of November 1st. I mean, No, October 31st is actually like a big deal all by itself, and everyone is pretty well aware that October is over after Halloween. You turn out the porch light, it's November. That's basically the way we operate. But for some reason, an extra week was necessary, I guess, or maybe poll workers are in diabetic comas from Halloween, possibly. For whatever reason, they think that if Election Day falls on November 1st, I guess they thought it was too confusing or too many people would forget. How you could forget, I mean, at this point, they didn't know we were going to have these kinds of elections. But I mean, does anybody not wish that the elections were next Tuesday and we could just get them over with? I don't know. I guess there's maybe the people with the last bit of Oppo research to dump are happy that there's an additional week so that they can wait just a little while longer and drop that last bombshell, but I can't imagine it's necessary at this point. Okay, well, let's move on to the other things that I have seen along the way. Let's see what there are a couple of things that I've been inspired to read in the abbreviated pundit roundup. Well, certainly that headline. Where was it now? The honeypot for a-holes. That's a tough radio headline. Inside Twitter's 10-year failure to stop harassment. Okay, well, that's a little bit of a bigger topic, but what a headline. Bigger, wider topic, worth exploring, post-election, perhaps, and we'll see how many of these trolls are still around with us. And I wonder, people are now beginning to speculate on whether or not people will ever remove deplorable from their handles, even after a big Donald Trump loss. Will they want to be associated with that? Will they not care? Will they be more motivated than ever to be associated with it? I'm not really sure what to make of that, but okay. That and what was the other thing that we brought up down at the end? Yeah, that you should. Well, you'll take a look when you see abbreviated pundit roundup. Well, I guess I was going to say I really recommend taking a look at this David French piece if you haven't been following exactly how annoying the trolls can be, but I recommend everything, of course, in the abbreviated pundit roundup. That's what it's there for. He doesn't include garbage. It's abbreviated. And not every pundit is in it. It has to, sometimes we miss things of value, but very rarely is there any garbage in there. So, I can't think of any examples. Anyway, but that David French piece, I don't know what David French is like personally, and I guess the fact that he's this bothered by the trolling would argue in favor of thinking that he's a decent enough soul that he wouldn't be engaging in this with other people, but I don't know. There's good conservatives out there, yeah, I guess, but everyone's, like, for instance, the fact that he's publishing at NRO. I mean, NRO was Internet Troll Central for a long time. It's not the worst of the worst, and certainly the alt-right takeover, which isn't even really a thing, of course. I keep enclosing it in quotes for a number of reasons, not the least of which is I don't really believe it's a thing, but it's certainly not new. I need to open up my Twitter feed from over the weekend, all the various things that I commented on and said to myself, this should be done on the radio. It's a big mistake to not have a radio show on the weekends and at nights. And although the original vision, one day we may get around to this. We need some technology built out for this thing. But the original vision, I don't know if I could keep up with it either. It would probably kill me. But I liked the idea. While I like the idea of having a regularly scheduled live show, I also kind of like the idea of what if there was a radio station that was really nothing but Daily Kos editors, let's say, or community members who were interested in this thing, or for that matter, just me, and just you could flip the switch whenever a thought occurred to you and you wanted to talk about an article that particularly excited you, and you just start a show. And since most people download by podcast anyway, it wouldn't necessarily matter that there weren't live listeners, but it's always kind of best if you can fool yourself and believe that there are live listeners. But I thought it might be an interesting technology just to have it. What if the Daily Kos radio vertical included, in addition to having its own space on Daily Kos and having that little radio tower icon, what if that radio tower icon would light up whenever Daily Kos Radio was broadcasting, no matter what time we started the show. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, middle of the night, it lights up and people see that and say, oh, listen into what's happening here. And if I miss it, grab it by podcast. I don't know if that's really feasible. Probably not. And certainly, I guess there's a big question mark about whether or not I would do a show if it wasn't regularly scheduled. If there weren't people waiting for it, I know that they'd be waiting for the podcast, but would I do it? I'd know that I didn't want to disappoint them. But anyway, I don't know. Having something about that, oh my God, it's 9 o'clock, we got to turn the microphone on, makes you do these things. Anyway, that was aside from this original thought. David French, and I guess last weekend I saw a lot of comments dredged up from old Twitter, like Rick Wilson's comment, where now he's a never Trumper and is expressing this shock and dismay at how deplorable Trump voters are in their discussion and their willingness to invoke the specter of violence online anyway. And Rick Wilson used to do the same thing. And NRO used to be, Jonah Goldberg's trolling central station. And now Eric Erickson is finding a soul, allegedly, all of a sudden in all this. And I mean, these guys did this kind of trolling all the time. I mean, I guess I'm glad they're waking up from their slumber, if that's what's happening. But I don't think so. I think once Trump is gone, these guys, go back to their old ways. And even though I don't think the alt-right disappears or Trump supporters disappear, I guess that's what was making me think about needing my Twitter feed from over the weekend. I noticed that yesterday there was a McKay Coppins tweet at some point. Let me see if we can dig it up. And there was nothing wrong with his tweet or nothing wrong with his story. It was just a good launching pad for making this comment. And that's very often the case when I'm responding to a journalist's commentary along with a link to their story. It's very rarely a commentary on the story itself, more either a commentary on the formulation of the headline and how that reads, or just a good platform for saying, here's another thought about that. Yeah, here it is. McKay Coppins tweeting yesterday, any establishment Republican who thinks that they won't have to spend years contending with an army of Trumpian primary insurgents is kidding themselves. Absolutely right. Nothing wrong with that statement at all. I tweeted this out, and by the way, I got auto-corrected, and I have no idea why autocorrect would do this to me. But I'm trying to say, were these people, anybody who would be caught by surprise by this, or who might be kidding themselves about this, as Coppins puts it, were they sleeping through this phenomenon when it was called the Tea Party? And you have to enclose that in quotes, too. I mean, I really, throughout the campaign season, there's been this tendency to refer to the alt-right or to insinuate that the alt-right, one, is a thing, and two, is a new thing at that. And it isn't. And we've described it variously over the months here on the show, racists who vape, whatever. And it's becoming increasingly clear that there's a huge overlap between what we knew as the Tea Party, what we know as Trump supporters and their deplorables, and the alt-right. And in many cases they're the same people. And, I thought, actually Josh Marshall put it rather succinctly over the weekend too, in saying the alt-right is basically, before you even get to any ideology, and I'm not certain that there really is a centralized, agreed-upon ideology beneath it at all, but the first prerequisite, I guess, of membership, if there is such a thing, in the alt-right, if there is such a thing, is just being a terrible person. The idea appears to be, whatever you're doing, whatever your ideology may actually be, approach it terribly. Be abusive, be provocatively abusive and disgusting. And that's really true. I just think that they basically the alt part, if you're trying to even figure out, obviously stands for alternate or alternative, I guess. But my impression has been, and this is based on no kind of scholarly study of them, and I hope that there never is one. They don't deserve it. But the alt part is, they're just holding themselves out as alternative to normal people who might actually be conservative. Whereas a conservative person or a right-wing person, well, they usually lack empathy anyway, which generally speaking makes them terrible. I mean, that's just the way it is. But okay, certainly if you are one of these people, you will disagree with that. But there certainly has historically been the main body of conservatives want to conduct themselves conservatively as well. Dress, business suit, button down, morally speaking, they like to portray themselves as being straight and narrow, even if they, behind the scenes and in personal lives, were not, and that's horrible and hypocritical. The hypocrisy is horrible. I don't know that the conduct is necessarily horrible. It just was hypocritical. But the alt-right seems chiefly concerned with, I guess they're the gimmitarian right. They want to take all the policy positions that they agree with, but they want to throw out the conservative image of button down and civil exchange type conservatives. They want to be provocative, and the first thing that I guess that they require of themselves is not to adhere to conventions about what is properly the subject of conversation or the proper way to bring up a topic. They're tired of civil discourse, and so an alt-right person basically is a right-winger who relishes shocking and insulting you. That's essentially what it is. That's what I've taken it to mean. And I don't think it's wrong. I mean, I don't think I'm incorrect about that. I think what they're doing is wrong, but that doesn't seem to bother them at all. Anyway, I just found that pretty interesting, and the idea that that is somehow different from the Tea Party is, I think, ridiculous. That wasn't a central premise necessarily of the Tea Party, but it was a common thread running throughout the Tea Party, and I guess if you're looking for a concrete example of it, Katrina Pearson, the hell is she doing in the center of the Trump campaign, which is standing in the center of alt-right world? And she got her start as a Tea Party scammer. And I mean that, scammer. But she comes direct from the Tea Party. The idea that, and also, of course, some of these establishment conservatives or whatever who might be thinking that who might be kidding themselves, as McKay Coppins puts it, many of them came up, they are Tea Party insurgents. I don't know why they wouldn't think that they would be primaried from the right all the time. But I also don't know why anybody would look at this and say, yeah, the alt-right Trump world, this is something completely different. It's just not. But we've been over that in the past. Okay, so I wanted to throw that one out there, remind you of what McKay Coppins had said, maybe if you hadn't seen it, what I had said about it. And we'll move on. I know Armando is itching to talk about a number of things. I've got a number of topics we're definitely going to get to today and throughout the week. And I almost hope that there's no news to overtake us so we can just fill in more of this material between now and the election. Let me just sneak in this about this Donald Trump and his golfing. Like I've said, lots of people have written on the fact that he's a cheater. And I would say there's probably about half a dozen celebrities who have been invited to play golf with him, who have later spoken to the press about it, either directly after or years later recalling it. But basically, everybody who I've seen who is willing to talk to the press about how Trump really is when he plays golf is just basically, not only is this guy a cheater. Look, I don't play a lot of golf, but I play some. And people cheat, and there's cheating and there's cheating. You know what I mean? For one thing, if you're just playing most friendly rounds of golf, there's nothing riding on it except, hey, let's all play, and everybody wants to look as good as they can, just like with anything else. But basically, if you're just playing with a bunch of hackers who play every once in a while, you'll find people who are like, my ball is really sitting deep in this awful grass, and we're not playing a match here. There's no money on the line. Why do I want to torture myself trying to dig this ball out of this grass? I'm going to pick it up and give myself a better lie, and I'll hit from here. I'm playing for distance and position, not so much playing the ball as it lies. That kind of thing happens all the time. Of course, if you're playing for money, as some people often do, just in casual rounds, then okay, you'll want to be a little more vigilant about that. But people who do that, people who'll toss a ball, I hit the ball in the woods and can't find it, and they'll just drop a ball and they say, I'm not going to take a penalty. I'm just going to count how many strokes I'm taking. Usually that's people who are so terrible at golf that it doesn't make a difference. 96, 97, and that's not terrible. That's average, I think. If you're playing 90 to 100 or 100 and more strokes, it doesn't really make a difference if you don't take the penalty for the lost ball and the drop. But if you like to learn the rules of golf, fine. Play along the lines of the rules of golf. This guy, though, Trump seems to have raised the stakes a little bit. And I don't know, maybe he is betting with the guys that he's playing with. I don't know. But he seems to have developed a pattern. 2, 3, 4 different celebrity golfers have noted that apparently, I guess he rides alone in his golf cart, which is a little unusual. If you're playing in a threesome or in a threesome, I guess it's not that unusual. 2 guys in the other cart. But usually you're playing in a foursome, you share the carts. But he insists on his own golf cart. And the reason is when he'll tee off or hit a ball and it goes out of bounds, he says, I got to go find my ball. And he immediately takes off running in the golf cart before the rest of the foursome has, or threesome or whatever it might be, whatever partners he has before they've hit, which is also a giant violation of golf protocol, plus a safety issue. You don't want to go driving up there looking for your ball while other people are shooting, they're teeing off or whatever, taking their shots up the same fairway. They're going to hit you in the head if they make the same mistake you do. But apparently he'll hit his ball and he just takes off routinely. And then he goes on the premise of looking to find his ball in the woods or the grass, the high rough, and then he parks his cart and jumps out. And he parks it in such a way that he's positioned the cart between him and the rest of the group so that he can take another ball out of his pocket and drop it and say, here it is. I found it. What do you know? It's right smack in the middle of the fairway. I thought it was in the woods, and we all saw it go in the woods, but it must have hit a tree. And a squirrel carried it out and put it in the middle of the fairway, so here I go. And everybody rolls their eyes and groans. But usually he's hosting you at his own golf course and probably gave you the round for free, and people don't care. There's no money on it. But there have been a few reports, like a Golf Magazine reporter or a Sports Illustrated reporter, that were just like, oh, my God, give me a break already. Worse than that, though, I think the Sports Illustrated guy claims, now this is something people do, right? They drop a ball, or usually they just say, my ball's in the woods. Everybody saw that. Oh my God, I'm not even going to look for it. I'm not keeping score today. I'm just going to drop a ball right here. And people say, go ahead, go for it, enjoy your round. Even among people who do that, even among people who cheat and kick their ball out, and try to make like it landed there. I've never seen anybody do this. There was a claim from the Sports Illustrated guy, I believe, that Trump drops balls on the green, that on a par 3, that he missed the green entirely. The people come around the corner in their carts after he dashes up there, and he's not only does he drop the ball on the green, he's dropped the ball 3 feet from the pin and says, here it is, I found it. What? In most cases on a par 3, you can see that from the tee box. There are a few times where there's an obscured look at the green, and there was another. Oscar De La Hoya was another of the sources on this. I don't know whether he's a trustworthy guy or not, but, famous enough. He went golfing with him. That same thing, par 3, only this time the green is obscured by shrubs, but you could still see the pin sticking up over the shrubs. They all take their shots. And again, on a par 3, you have a pretty good idea of how straight, anyway, people have hit the ball. Even if you're not sure how close they ended up to the pin. So he shanks one off into the woods and says, I'm going to go look for my ball. And they go driving up, and then he takes off right away. On a par 3, extraordinarily dangerous to just go looking for your ball. And then when they arrived, look, here I am. Not only that, I'm right next to the pin. And then occasionally he will pick up the ball and not putt it and say, 3 feet, that's a gimme. Now, of course, the other partners are supposed to concede you that gimme. You can't just pick it up and say, I totally would have made it. By some accounts, he's quite a good putter. And, maybe he is. But I've never encountered anybody who just drops a ball on the green and says, that's my shot. I've encountered people who say, I lost my ball and I can't find it. And ordinarily, I would go back if we were in match play and drop it. But, we're just having a casual run. I'm going to drop a ball on the fringe of the green here and practice some long putts while you guys are putting. And take the advantage of the time that I'm standing here. But never have I seen anybody drop a ball on the green and say, that's where I lie. But, well, that's where Trump lies. He lies all the time about that stuff. Now, okay, so he's a legendary cheater. I think some of the comments I rounded up, let's say, and some of the celebrities who've said things like this. Alice Cooper, a very diverse group. Samuel L. Jackson, among the others. By the way, uniformly, when they speak to the press, Trump, like the women he assaults, says, I don't know that guy. I never met that guy. And, there's pictures of them golfing together. Trump, in the case of Samuel L. Jackson, says, I'm going to set you up with a complimentary membership, lifetime membership here at my club. So, I never met the guy. I just gave him a complimentary lifetime membership. Then Jackson says he began getting billed monthly for dues for his complimentary membership. Screw this. Let me out of here. But a couple of people have said the same thing about him. And people have said the same thing about other political golfers, but he seems to be a notch above this. Certainly the dropping things on the green thing I never heard of. But in all this, and somebody else had mentioned, on a scale of 1 to 10 in cheating, he's an 11. That was a good comment. The reason I bring this up is heading into the weekend, and was it on the weekend, Saturday? There was another accuser came forward. I think this makes the 11th by whatever, I don't know, the count we're going by now. I'm not sure what the criteria are, but I think we're up to 11. This woman had an interesting story. She is I'm going to say a porn star, but everybody who's in porn is not a star. I always thought that was resume inflation for everybody to say that. But I guess in their terminology, she's a contract performer. You remember, that will ring a bell. The phrase will ring a bell for you because we read last week the Stormy Daniels story, and it's the same story. In fact, if you remember the Stormy Daniels story, she is working at the Wicked Pictures booth table in the celebrity gifting suite. Remember that whole story? And Trump allegedly begins an affair with her there. One of the other women at the Wicked Pictures table is this latest accuser. She was there in 2006. And you can tell he's wearing the same outfit in his picture with Stormy Daniels as he's wearing with this other woman who, unfortunately, I can't remember her name. Stormy Daniels, I remember because she ran or threatened to run for Senate against David Vitter. This woman, I don't think, has run for Senate anywhere. So, that's my criteria. Anyway, so her allegations, by the way, were not nearly as awful as some of the previous allegations. Not because, who cares, she's a sex worker. That we try to put that aside. But the allegations were of improper behavior, nothing that I would necessarily say rises to the level of criminal assault. There's the tort of assault. He kissed her without asking permission, and that is not permissible. And I don't think anybody makes a criminal assault charge out of that, but anyway, it was really more of a story of him basically randomly propositioning women for sex and them saying no, and then him persisting by adding like money and gifts into the exchange. I'll give you $10,000 and let you use my private jet to fly home in. Which, I guess, again, as propositions go, the good news for everybody here is that he didn't say, oh, you're still refusing me? Well, to hell with it, I'm just going to rape you. At least it doesn't go there. He goes away at some point. So, like I said, in that sense, it's not the worst allegation I've ever heard. But it was a weird one, and that it involved another of the women at the Wicked Pictures thing is also maybe a little indicative of where his taste runs, but, you know, I don't know. Clearly, Wicked Pictures is in the business of making films that are appealing to a broad demographic of, I guess, of porn consumers. So if you're in that demographic, or I guess even if you're not, obviously the idea is, well, we're going to put women in there that are going to be attractive to as many men and women, I guess, as possible. So, you know, it's not like totally weird that Donald Trump would say, I'm attracted to these women. It is a little weird in the sense that Melania is home with a 4-month-old and he's flown out to play golf for the weekend and he's like propositioning anybody. But, you know, in the main, there wasn't anything terribly strange about it. It's by design that he finds himself attracted to them. So I guess I can't fault him for that part. It's the let's have a relationship part. That's not, or let's have not a relationship, but you giving me sexual favors and me giving you $10,000. Also bad. Anyway, that all happened in the context of a charity golf tournament in Lake Tahoe, which brings me around to the golf cheating thing. Now, I don't think he was doing any golf cheating that weekend. But he was trying to do some cheating. That's the important thing. But as for the golf cheating, I don't think he got away with it because it was as legit a tournament as he's likely to ever find himself playing in, I guess. In other words, money was at stake, not for him because he was playing as an amateur, but money was at stake for others. It was a celebrity golf tournament. So mostly athletes from other sports, you know, football players, baseball players, other famous people, actors, etc. Some of whom played for prize money, and some of whom played as amateurs, so that they wouldn't be eligible for prize money. And Trump, it is surprising, he played as an amateur. I'm surprised that he didn't, you know, try to claim some prize money, because why not? He should just. People are offering me money? Okay, great. I'll take it. But anyway, he enters as an amateur. And because there's money at stake, there's real scorekeeping. And because it's not his tournament, it's not a Donald Trump benefit tournament, it's not being held at a Trump course, he's not in control of the scoring. So, and because it's a celebrity event, it is the American Century Championship, they call it. It's the Edgewood course in Edgewood, Tahoe South. And they have online the results of the 2006 American Century Championship. The American Century is it's a financial group, right? So it's a charity thing, branded for them, and whatever money they raise from getting people to come and watch celebrities play, buying tickets, what have you, they donate to charity. What charity? I don't know. Who cares? The point is, they keep score, and they keep it for real, and it's online, and Donald Trump can't cheat. So, given that Trump has told everybody in the world he's an awesome golfer, and I mean awesome, he says he's a PGA level golfer. And I got the links for all this. I'll give them all to Scott. You'll see it. He has claimed in the past, I'm really, really good at golf. I'm like PGA Tour level good at golf. And when other people have challenged his golfing, and have said he's a cheater, he has, it pushes him to make even greater, more ridiculous claims. He says, there are things like, there are very few people who can beat me at golf. I gotta scroll back down to my Saturday tweets. And I mean, just one after the other, he's claiming how great he is at golf. And now we actually get to take a look at his score where he can't cheat. And you see what it's really like. Now, the American Century Tournament it's a little different from the way, if you're a casual golf fan or any kind of golf fan at all, and you watch it on TV, you will not necessarily be familiar with their scoring system. You're used to the stroke play, as they call it, and I'm aware that sounds like double entendre, but it's not. So you will look and you'll see their scores expressed as number of strokes under par, and the low score wins, right? So if you're minus 15, you could be in the lead for this tournament, but it will take you 4 days to get down to minus 15, minus 20. 4 rounds played over 4 days. This is just a 3-day tournament with 3 rounds played, so not quite as grueling. And they're using what they call the modified Stableford scoring system. So in this case, higher scores win each day anyway. But they also kept a track of the total strokes over 3 days. And that will be the more familiar format, I guess. We'll take that. The Stableford system is, you get 1 point for making a birdie that is 1 under par on any given hole. 2 points for making 2 under, and there are additional things. There's bonuses if you make an eagle, and if you get bogeys, you lose points. So basically it's you want to stack up points. The winner was Jack Wagner, with whom I'm not familiar, but speaking about the prize money, what's at stake? Jack Wagner, when he wins, won $100,000. I don't know whether that goes to him or whether that goes to his favorite charity or what. Billy Joe Tolliver came in second, got $50,000. But there's checks being cut for everybody who's playing as a non-amateur. Charles Barkley is the low finisher, or usually in golf you say the low finisher would be the person who's winning. So here he's got the lowest Stableford score, which is a bad thing. And nonetheless, he's in for $775.50 in prize money. He shot 307 strokes over the 3 days, so that's averaging over 100 per round. He's a hacker golfer, just a regular amateur guy, having fun. The winner, Jack Wagner, came around in 213 strokes, so almost 100 strokes more for Charles Barkley, and yet $775.50 in it for him. Of course, the entry fee was likely $1,000 or more, and he ended up losing money, but he didn't care. He got to play golf in a nice place with famous people. Who else is there? Chris Webber, Kevin Nealon. I'm reading up from the bottom here. Cheech Marin is in this thing. Stone Phillips, Brandy Chastain. So, you get the idea. Of course, Donald Trump there. Gene Upshaw, Ray Romano is in it. C. Thomas Howell, Bodie Miller, we mentioned the other day. Jim McMahon, Ben Roethlisberger, right? Didn't he play with Trump too? A crazy pairing. Dan Quayle, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So anyway, give me a minute here, Armando. He wants to know, when are you going to be done with this golf thing? All right, in just a second. Anyway, the point is that Donald Trump's score is there, and it is this. I'll give you in 3 rounds, he came in with a 268. That averages just over 89 strokes per round, which is a good amateur round, fine for your occasional player. The idea that is anywhere near PGA caliber, and he may have gotten really awesome in the last 10 years. It's been 10 years since you've had that round. You can become fantastic if you really put your mind to it in 1 year. But the idea that this guy is a professional level player, and I don't cheat at golf, and how dare you? I mean, this is so obvious to anybody who plays any golf at all. He did manage a 6 on the Stableford system on the first round, which means he likely came in at or slightly under par, which would be a great round for somebody who averaged about 89 for the rest of the week. So, par 72. In order to get 6 points, you could have a bunch of birdies and a bunch of pars, and not really tank on any hole, and that would be an awesome round. I mean, for somebody who could also shoot on average 89. But look at that. I mean, think about that. On average, he was shooting an 89. If he came in with something like a 72, even. Actually, I'm not even sure how do you get a positive Stableford score unless you're under par. I've never played on Stableford scoring, but I guess if you birdie a bunch of holes, but also bogey a bunch, as long as you birdie more, I don't know. Or maybe you get an eagle, you luck out somewhere, chip in and get an eagle. But anyway, that just means that if he had a fantastic first round, that his second 2 rounds, too, would have been disastrous in order to get you an average of 89. So, I don't know. But that and just the way he was bragging is unbelievable. And I had a bunch of tweets, and I'll have to kind of include them in the roundup. But man, the things I grabbed from the survey of published reports about him cheating and his reaction to the cheating has been really rather incredible. Okay, that's way longer than I thought I should have been spending on golf, but I guess I like talking about golf. It's fun. You should play. Let's give a wave to Armando here and say, now I can't even recall what it was precisely that he wanted to discuss, but we might as well wave him in here, and I'll review our messages back and forth. Yes, he was talking about Josh Marshall during the weekend and leading into the weekend. Did the Josh Marshall thing, a little bit of musing in tweet storms about, I don't know, everything. The nature of our two-party system and how it's structured and how difficult it really would be to escape from it without something on the level of a constitutional amendment. And he was sort of dancing around the territory where we've discussed things on this show about how the system we've got is just not built for robust third-party participation. It's not to say that a third party can't rise, grow to become robust, and supplant one of the two parties, but the idea being that you'll always end up coming back to two parties because we've got coalitions, voting coalitions working in Congress. There's just very little opportunity for one thing, voting any other way. The fact that there's really only two ways to vote, yes or no, on any question, lends itself to lining up in one of two camps. There's a million reasons for getting into those camps, but there's just two. And if you find yourself with some frequency joining with one camp or another more often, far more often than another, you likely will find yourself falling into coalition with that camp. And then, of course, there's the mechanics of things like committee assignments, etc., where there's a very distinct advantage so distinct an advantage, in fact, that it becomes impossible to operate outside of the caucusing system that parcels out, for instance, committee assignments based on whether or not you'll align with one coalition or another. And same thing goes really even for voting for president. The idea of a third-party insurgent presidency seems ridiculous unless it's step one towards supplanting one of the two existing parties. The fact that we're winner take all in how we elect all of our elected officials, but in our executive in particular, and that there's so much concentrated power that goes on with it and so much at stake if it should fall into the hands of the leader of the other coalition. It just makes it virtually impossible to choose to stay outside of any of the two major coalitions and have a serious chance at steering policy direction. It was an interesting way of his approaching it. And I guess, of course, if you are running as a third-party candidate, you have very little choice but to insist that it's actually super effective. And if everybody would just vote their conscience, then things would be different. And that's, one has to date been extraordinarily unrealistic. But, I guess in the face of an election like this one, our third-party candidates have raised it to a new art form. So perhaps Armando would like to come on and discuss what thoughts he had about that one. And apparently, in particular, he was interested in Jill Stein tweeting on ranked preference voting, which we've talked about a little bit in the past on the program as well, but which presents some unique problems. Here's Armando now, as a matter of fact. Good morning, Armando.
Hey, David. How are you?
Okay. A little rambly today. Talking about golf. It seemed like a weekend
It was
thing.
good. The golf stories are hilarious.
I really got to grab those quotes.
As you documented, he is a notorious cheater.
It's like a world-class cheater. I mean, really. Do you play golf at all?
I'm not very good, but I do play whenever I can.
Yeah. Have you ever run into somebody who would literally just say, "Hey, look over there," and then drop a ball 3 feet from the hole and say, "Oh, I didn't even see
Judge
this."
Smales did that, but other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, that's really. There's literally no way to get away with dropping a ball on the green and saying, because if you've never played golf or even seen it at all, it'd be like dropping an extra ball on a pool table and saying, "Look at that! Where did that come from?"
Where did that come from? He hit the ball in the woods, and somehow it ended up 2 feet from the hole.
Right.
Listen, he does that about everything, though. Think about it.
Yeah. Well, that's largely
he tweets out today. He's tweeted a lot of things, but one of the funnier ones he's tweeted out was that he leads in all the polls that don't oversample.
They're so onto that oversampling thing, like they really just don't. I don't know. They don't know what it is, but if you listen to the show,
I get that,
you do.
But it's just funny. I mean, the guy's running for president of the United States, and he's tweeting things like this.
I'm the best golfer too, and a lot a lot of people were pointing me to, I guess Kim Jong-il, or I don't know.
Yeah, 27, his first time on the course.
Yeah.
Was it 27?
Yeah, or he had claimed, I think, 11 holes in one. Which, the parallel to, even in mini golf, no. But
mini golf.
The parallel here was, now Donald Trump is not that bad, but he does, one of the other things that he tends to do is he claims to be club champion and or to hold the course record at his own courses. He says, I played the first round that was ever played at the new Trump National. Nobody was here because we weren't open yet. So you didn't see it. You don't know her. She's from Canada, is basically what this is. No one was there, but I shot a 66. That's the course record. And it goes up on a big plaque in the clubhouse somewhere, and everybody, now has to shoot for that record to be the, or he says, I'm the club
imagine
champion.
being a member of that course,
Yeah.
Of that club. It's like, what?
Yeah, I don't think so. And by the way, one of the other things on the American Century Championship thing, they also had the long drive competition, as often happens at these charity tournaments. They just pick one hole and, we tee off, and then basically an honor system thing. If you hit the first drive of the day on that hole, you put a marker down where your ball was and you write your name on it. And then if anybody else outdrives you, they write their name on it and move the marker. And then they measure it. Sometimes they actually have a competition where it's just everybody driving on the driving range and they measure and stuff. But the big hitters in this, there were some, but they list the top 10. Now, the winner, Paul O'Neill, baseball player, you would imagine he has a big drive. 357. gigantic drive.
It's huge.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the top 10 over 300 yards. So big hitters. These are all athletes, not golf pros, but athletes. But you can crack the top 10 with a number 10 here, Anthony Anderson, 242, which in a long drive competition, okay. But which suggests if they were hitting on one of the holes that Donald Trump, PGA level golfer, does not drive 240 plus.
He hit a grounder on the hole.
I mean, I think he probably hit it out of bounds, and so you can't do that. You can't win, even if you hit a 350-yard drive. If you're not on the fairway, it doesn't count. But yeah, he either missed the fairway or can't drive 240 plus, which for a PGA level golfer is probably 5 iron. So
yeah, he's not. Come on. I mean, I imagine he's a decent amateur golfer, but
maybe
come on. Yeah. He probably shoots in the low 80s or something like that.
Yeah, which would be terrific.
Which is great. I wish I shot in the low 80s.
10 years down the road, if he was shooting average 3 rounds of 89 in 2006, no doubt that he could be shooting average 79 10 years down the road. Sure. If you own a bunch of golf courses and you play all the time.
Yeah, you got to play all the time. That's the thing about golf.
But anyway,
he's unbelievable. But the Jack Wagner, just to let you know, he was the very famous Frisco from General Hospital.
Oh,
back in the day.
I see.
Very well known, and known to be a very good golfer, as you know.
Apparently, $100,000 worth.
My 6 degrees of separation is he's very good friends with a friend of mine, who I'm going to shield his. Well, not that anybody would know him that listens to us, but my friend used to be involved in managing stock portfolios, and then he decided to be a professional poker player. Yes. And Jack Wagner was his original bankroll. So
really?
That's my 6 degrees of separation to Jack Wagner.
Living the life is a soap actor and golfing like crazy and bankrolling professional gambling.
He's got a life. No question.
You see why Donald Trump's hanging around with him, I guess.
So that's my Jack Wagner story.
Cool.
For the day. I actually wanted to talk to you about something I know you participate a little bit in Twitter, and I know you've thought about this tons, which is all this question about the value of third-party voting and how do you make it worthwhile.
Yes, delicate.
And as you recall, Josh Marshall had a bit of a Twitter storm on how our structure of government just basically makes third-party voting somewhat useless as it's structured now. The main reasons I think we all know, both on the constitutional level and just practical level of what happens. We have what's referred to as first by the post elections. That is, if you're first, you win. Louisiana actually has a slightly different system. I think we'll find out. In fact, they'll have a runoff almost certainly in December for a Senate seat that's up there.
Yeah, David Duke qualified for the ballot and for the debate.
Yeah, David Duke, I believe, qualified for the debate.
Congratulations.
There. But no one's expected to get 50%. They require majority vote. So there is runoff voting, but even then it doesn't really play to third-party votes because if you're not in the top 2, you don't make it to the runoff. So unless you're third party, basically, at which point, you could have won a primary.
Yeah. If
you had enough voters, you could have won a primary in one state or the other. But at any rate, there's that. And of course, the language, I believe, of Article 1 of the Constitution does require the creation of specific congressional districts. People disagree with me on this and say, well, they think the language permits. And this goes to House races, not the Senate races, which of course are statewide anyway. But my view of the language in Article 1, and you can peruse it if you like, is that it pretty much requires the creation of congressional districts by the states. Because the number of representatives, or the minimum number at any rate, is tied to number of people. And in order to, that is, you can't have districts of less than 30,000 people. I think that implies that you need to create districts, House districts, that are proportionally representative of the total population as a whole. That is, take Rhode Island, which has about 1 million people, for an example, and you have, I believe that translates into 2 districts by the census based on the number of people we have. I don't think you can make those 2 at large. I think you need to have representation of numbers proportionally of a congressional district within the state. That's my interpretation of it. Of course, there's been no case law on it, but there has been case law on dilution of votes, particularly when minorities are involved, where you can't draw locally or on the state level districts for county commissions and things like that, where the whole at-large situation doesn't work. One of the famous cases on this was the New York City Board of Estimate back in the 80s, where it was struck down because it diluted votes. The way it used to work is there was a chairman of each county. In New York, the counties are the 5 boroughs: Kings, Queens, Bronx, Staten Island, and Manhattan. Staten Island would get overrepresented because there's a lot less people there, and they would have the same vote on the Board of Estimate as Queens and Brooklyn, which had a lot more people in it, and the Bronx too, and of course Manhattan. So that was struck down as unconstitutional. So I think any attempt to not have proportional districts in states would also be unconstitutional. So at any rate, to let you cut in, here's what I thought about. It's interesting that Jill Stein finally got to a point that I thought she should have been making about what her campaign would be about, instead of being, all attack Hillary Clinton. And say Trump is less likely to go to war with Russia, which I guess might be true if you think about it. But at any rate, she's talked about this ranked preference voting, which is runoff voting, however you want to talk about it. And I wanted to open up that whole concept to discussion with you because I had some thoughts, and I know you've had thoughts in the past.
Well, I'm not an expert in this mode of voting, but yeah, first of all, certainly anything that would prolong our campaign season, I can't approve of at this point. But as often happens in Louisiana, they have additional campaign time. But certainly you could adjust for that if you needed to. But, I guess third-party candidates tend to gravitate towards this because it's their belief that lots of people prefer these other third-party candidates on, whether it's just a personal preference thing, moral grounds. They feel like, there are still, of course, people who are like, well, Hillary, I don't trust her, but Trump is such a disaster, and I don't want to fool around with my vote, and I don't want there to be any doubt that we're rejecting Trump, so I'm going to vote for, people say, hold my nose and vote for Hillary Clinton or anybody, any candidate, whoever it is that they choose. And the third-party candidates are usually on the losing end of that stick because nobody ever says, well, I'm going to hold my nose and vote for the third-party alternative because it doesn't make any sense. Well, why are you holding your nose? They're not going to win. It's not going to be your fault if this third-party candidate wins. But I guess nobody else thinks about holding their nose and voting for third-party candidates because they always are saying, I'm voting my conscience. There would be no point in holding my nose. I'm not upset with my vote.
Yeah, I think that's one of the flaws of this idea of instant runoff voting anyway, and ranked preference voting. I mean, suppose you have a ballot with 5 candidates. Yeah. I'll take this presidential contest, for example.
Okay.
And I rank my choices, and I say Clinton first, Jill Stein second, Evan McMullin third, Gary Johnson fourth, Trump fifth.
Yeah.
All right. So what happens with that? Two emerge, and let's say the two are.
There are many models of the way to do the mechanics of it too, right? Sometimes, by the way, before we even get into it, sometimes the answer is okay. Top two vote getters, however they calculate this, will then run off against one another. In other cases, people just say, well, we're just going to total up the scores and declare a winner out of this.
Right. That's the idea of the instant runoff.
Yeah.
You can basically say, well, you said so-and-so was second. We'll once we get to the top two, we'll realign your vote to the person you preferred the most.
Right.
The problem with that, I mean, that would work, at least functionally, if you could get it done, it could work. The problem I have with it is campaigns don't really inform people this way. It's not like, suppose there's a surprise and the number 4 somehow comes into number 2, but the number 4, you hasn't been vetted, you're not sure,
Yeah.
and so on. And in a way, it's also, suppose I don't have a second choice.
Yeah.
I'm against everybody else. Can I just vote for one? And blank out everybody else?
Well, you gotta have that. You gotta have a contingency plan for that, because I promise you that 90+% of the voters will just do that.
Exactly.
No matter how you explain to them, and maybe in 100 years, people will get around to the idea of putting a third choice in there. But
the reality is, you're going to have a runoff.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea there then is we don't change anything except have runoffs.
Yeah. Or instead of having 2 primaries, we just have one big horse race, and then.
Well, that's what happens in California and Washington and I guess Louisiana too.
Right. Any of those people traveling, barnstorming the country, saying, "You guys have got to do it the way we do it. It's so awesome."
No, they're all saying how horrible it is, actually, and it is. I mean, that's the reality of it. Now, you can let's say in a particular congressional district, you have. Let's turn the 5 presidential candidates into 5 congressional candidates. Unless you have a majority requirement with a runoff, and if you did do that, then that would solve the third party problem. In theory, hey, just beat the first 2. Everybody has a choice.
Yeah.
If you want Jill Stein over Hillary Clinton as your congressperson, vote for Jill Stein. Now, but if Jill Stein loses, well, that's it, right?
Yep.
I mean, there's no monopoly there. And of course, that's also self-fulfilling, because the reality is Jill Stein could beat her now and win the election if people want her. I mean, we don't need any special tricks. We just need more people to support Jill Stein over Hillary Clinton for Congress.
Yeah.
And she can be the liberal alternative and win win the election. Just convince people to vote for you at the end of the day is the problem, right?
Yeah. Right. And then, of course, then it becomes the nuanced problem of, well, here are my 200 reasons why it's been unfair today. They don't allow her in the debate. Well, they would if she had more support. Well, she would have more support if they allowed her in the debate. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
What else are you going to do?
I guess I'd turn it upside down. I think if you're building a party in our country, you need to show some strength locally. Win a local election. Win one. Win a city council seat.
That would be helpful, certainly.
Win a county commission seat. Win a state representative seat. Look, say what you will about Bernie Sanders. He didn't fall into the party structure.
Right.
He ran. He won the mayoralty of Burlington. Mm-hmm. And then when there was an opportunity to win the representative seat, he ran as an independent. And I think the first time he split the vote and the Democrat lost and then the second time the NRA was mad at the Republican guy and basically sabotaged him, and Bernie beat both the Democrat and the Republican. I mean, it can be done.
Yeah. A small state, and that was particularly, I think, attuned to their
Sure, I mean, it's a
politics.
special case. Do I think it's a winning formula? No, but here's the thing. Bernie didn't start by running for president.
True. Yeah, that's a particularly, I think, ineffective way of starting, to be sure. I mean, in some ways, it's the more likely way to actually to win, if only because in most congressional districts, running as an independent marginalizes you right from the get-go. But the presidential race attracts occasionally, every once in a while, an independent candidate of tremendous wealth who can overcome the problems that the major parties were largely designed to, obviate,
right,
getting money together to do this.
For better or worse, they have the money, but people in the United States, and the press included, thinks making a lot of money is an achievement. Mm-hmm. And, on some level it certainly is. Generally you have to do something right to make a lot of money, even if it's committing crimes. You have to be good at it.
Yeah. Well, I guess so.
But that's how they judge. But when you take Gary Johnson, for example. Gary Johnson was the governor of New Mexico.
Yeah.
I mean, he did do something. This is the whole problem I have with the Green Party idea there. But I'd like to not be so picking on Jill Stein, but to pick your brain a little bit about this thought. Mm-hmm. Isn't the real issue for third parties and I don't want to call them fringe, how about radical?
Not all of them are
points
radical,
of view.
I get you. Yeah.
Is that we don't have a parliamentary system. And by that I mean not even just a first by the post. You have to have a proportional parliamentary system with candidate lists that you saw. Look, that's what they do in Israel. That's what they do in Italy, and that's what they do in Iraq. To give you three examples.
And
so if you pick up 5% of the vote, you get whatever 1 or 2 seats, and go from there.
Yes, well, that would certainly be much more helpful.
For getting
people
is it good governance?
I
don't think so. But isn't that really what they need to be for?
I would think so, and I don't think any of them would have a huge problem with it. By the way, our blue, now green DuPage sends us the fact sheet here. There are 279 Green Party candidates seeking office in 2016, so that's good. I mean, that's a thing you have to do. You have to win. I mean, in order for this to start taking root. But it's not that she's the only one. Although I will say, I find that the lower down the ballot you are, the easier this is to do. And so, therefore, the more often it happens. Developing a complete platform for your, and a serious one that, really stacks up. And I guess, I don't know. I really don't know. I didn't study Jill Green's platform enough to do this, but I find that every once in a while, whenever the media that admittedly don't like her very much ask questions and seek to fill in details that the other candidates are, more or less adept at, but certainly willing to or feel compelled to answer questions about certain policy issues, that the answer you agree with, disagree with, whatever, it's usually, except for Trump, a fairly serious attempt at formulating a position. And I've never really felt that way about any third party candidate for president before, where if they get off the issue that they're running in protest of, they tend to get lost, it seems to me. Although, maybe the only real problem is, well, they don't strike any familiar chords with me, but that's because I prefer the majority party positions in many instances, and when they depart from them, I dismiss it as unrealistic or radical, possibly, but very often it just seems like, I don't know how much thinking you've been doing about, you've thought much more deeply about environmental issues than either of the two major party candidates, probably, but when it gets to Head Start funding, things start to sputter a little bit. You haven't thought about that a great deal. I mean, it may be that Jill Green has a fully developed Head Start early childhood education platform that I don't know about, but it's very often the case, certainly for Gary Johnson, like what's Aleppo, or, Why are you doing this? Really? You're a weed protest candidate? I can't have you in there. I mean, terrific. Have all the pot you want. You don't know what Aleppo is? Really? You can't smoke enough to figure that out, man. You just gotta know.
I mean, Gary Johnson's an interesting character. I mean, none of these people are running to be president. They're running for other reasons. Yeah. In reality, it's hard to figure out what those reasons are. Is the problem I have with the idea of a presidential candidacy like that? I think that works in primaries.
Yeah, I mean,
in party primaries, and that's sort of the point. I mean, if you're trying to push an issue or two issues or four issues, you just get more. You get heard about it more. I mean, what do we know? Gary Johnson's gotten a fair amount of attention. Jill Stein a little less.
Yeah.
What is Gary Johnson's campaign about?
I don't know.
Nobody knows.
But
that's
we would.
My point. If you run in a party primary, look at what was Bernie. By contrast, what was Bernie Sanders' campaign about?
I don't know if I could say any clearer than. But I have a better idea.
Let's say that
I don't know if I can express it.
It was a campaign about the injustices in our economic system.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I gleaned from it.
I think that's what I got.
And
out of it too.
We heard it. What the millionaires and the billionaires and all that stuff.
Yes.
But we laugh about it. But the reason we remember it is because it worked. The message actually got through. He changed the conversation. You can't say Gary Johnson, Jill Stein have changed a thing.
Yeah, and Gary Johnson, I put on his personality, and maybe Jill Stein too. I mean, it's not that I haven't heard of the Green Party, and it's not that I haven't heard of the Libertarian Party. I know that they have fielded candidates before, and that they've been, I think, have been better. I don't know. So Jill Stein strikes me as.
Yeah, I think she's a particularly weak candidate. I've tweeted that out. I think she's not good at it. I don't think she's good at what the party is trying to do. If I understand what the party is trying to do. If it's trying to help Trump, I don't even think they're very good at that either. Yeah, but that's a different story. Really I don't know what that's all supposed to mean. I do think that and I saw there's a tweet out there saying, "Oh, but interesting runoff voting is very simple. Your next ranked candidate goes to your vote after, and I'm not even sure how that's supposed to work either." So the idea of it is, okay, I have instant ranked voting.
Yeah.
Presumably these won't have paper trails because if we're going to do it instantly, we're doing it by computer, right?
Well, but they'll have. Yeah, you have to fill out. I mean, you can certainly have a paper trail for it. You fill out.
All right. So how long is it going to take to count an instant rank voting on paper?
Once the data is entered, then it's just a matter of running it through the computer. Assuming you use a computer and you're willing to trust a computer, which I guess
this is what I'm getting. Suppose
same issue, but
you want paper trails. You hate Diebold.
Yeah.
So we can't use computers. So how does instant runoff voting work?
Okay. So if they
we count the first preferences.
Yes.
Oh well, now we're down to two. Now what? We go count them again?
Yeah. Essentially, you have it. I guess if you're refusing to use a computer, somewhere
then you can't do it.
You would
it has to be on a computer.
I guess, but somewhere you would have candidate A has. You would assign points. So you got 5 candidates. If you get a 1, that's worth 5 points to you because you're chosen first. So voter A gives you 5 points. I'm running out of variables, but the first voter says candidate A is my first choice. He gets 5 points. Candidate B is my second choice. They get 4 points, etc. And so now you take all the ballots and you add up how many 5s did candidate A get? How many 4s did candidate A get? How many 3s? How many 2s? How many 1s? Where it becomes a serious hassle is then you say, okay, candidate A has this many points, that many. You can do things that way. You can also then say, all right, well, the candidate A isn't viable, and so now your 5-point vote is tossed. if it was for candidate A. Your 4-point vote is the one that's going to count, and we're going to assign that to, it's nuts. Of course, it would have to be done by computer in order to. It
has to be done by
out,
computer.
But that's not such a
huge
problem.
I think if it's done by computer, that's simple enough.
Of course, it would be.
Viable. I mean, actually, it's still a little murky.
Yeah, I don't even know. I mean, there's so many different systems too. You don't know which one you're talking about. Some people say, "Well, this one is the one I mean."
That's not my main objection. I'm assuming all that could be worked out. My main objection is that when you're down to 2, there should be a choice.
Yes. Well, I guess.
But my even bigger objection is that doesn't even solve your problem. You're still going to lose. If you want minor parties to have a bigger voice, you've got to basically say we've got to blow up the Constitution, go to a parliamentary system with candidate lists and proportional representation.
That's the
so that if you get 5%, listen, we know that system. It's Israel, it's Italy, it's Iraq, and I think that's really what they should be for.
Yeah, I mean, it puts you in the position of, then somebody says, are you saying that you are for this inherently unstable system? And
I'm not. I'm against it. I'm saying they should be for it.
Right, and then they would be in the position of having to say, yeah, I'm for instability. Of course, I'm not. I would prefer that we be stable, but I like the idea that, minor parties can have a voice. People will feel like their vote count. I like that side effect. People feel like their vote counts for something. But
what's interesting? I have an example that they might appreciate. It's from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has a system of both geographic and at-large representation in its legislature. The governor, of course, is elected statewide, and some of the senates and representatives are elected statewide off a candidate list. And the minor parties there generally don't put forward lists. They usually put forward 1 or 2 candidates, and because there you're picking like 5. Let's say you're picking 5 statewide senators and 10 representatives, and people vote 5 to 10, whatever it is, 5 times or 10 times for who they want to fill these seats. And the minor parties will put up one and try to get the major party supporters to throw votes their way. And it works. They generally do have 1 or 2 representatives in the legislature. Now, what they end up doing is interesting to me because I want to take you back to a tweet that you made in response to Josh, which is, okay, they get in. Okay, we elect a few. Now what? Well, they go to Congress. What do? They have to vote for a leader. Who they vote for?
Yeah, they can vote for themselves if they wish, or some
they won't
third
get
party.
it. Obviously,
right,
they have to pick. At the end of the day, it ends up deciding between 2 parties again, right?
Yeah, basically. I mean, if you still have 2 majority parties and you magically drop some third party members of Congress into the mix, yeah. One of the first things that they're asked is, they're probed by the other members. Which side of the aisle do you really fall on? You're a Green. You might go to the person and say, I imagine you'd be more at home with the Democrats than the Republicans. And they would say, well, I was very clear about this in my campaign. I'm not a Democrat for a reason. Yeah, I understand. But who are you going to caucus with? And, you may say nobody. Or like if you're Angus King, you say everybody. I'll change my mind each week. No, not vote with, caucus with. I don't know what caucus means. Or I hope you don't. So anybody. And then they say, I'm going to put it to you this way. If you want to sit on a committee, you got to line up with one of these 2 governing or, major party coalitions. They're going to take care of getting you in. Well, that's not fair. That's not right. That's not the way it ought to be. That's true. You should change the rules. You're going to need allies to change the rules because, of course, it takes a majority vote, and you have 3 votes. So
somebody's got to run the place, though. I mean, at the end of the day, it can't just be. Well, I guess. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but it can't just be. Well, we sort of decide every day as a body of 100 in the Senate what the agenda is going to be today.
Yeah, I mean, you can do things. Again, it's inherently unstable, and it's the sort of thing. We know the system. You mentioned it: Italy, France, Israel, et cetera. And then you say, hey, isn't that also the list of, highly developed first world countries that we're also constantly reading about the government collapsing and that there's no government? There is, but there's no governing coalition, and things fall apart over very often relatively small issues. The kind of issue that makes a person say, I'm very liberal, but I refuse to be a Democrat, I'm a Green, is going to come up from time to time, and they're going to say, I'm not with you this week. And then now you're in a situation where you're like, wow, the Speaker of the House is maybe not the Speaker of the House, because this week they disagree over how big the earned income tax credit should be. And they're going to put their foot down on this, and we give and give and give, and we just can't get them over the line. They think we're not giving enough. The government collapses. Really? This isn't what I had in mind. Yeah, I know. But that's why, I mean, when I keep coming back to the thing, like, again, you drop a third party in there, they got to choose a side and vote yes or no on any given question. The questions right from day one. Will these be the rules or will they not be the rules? There's no choice. Yes or no. If you vote no and no wins, you get a chance to propose a different set of rules. True. But in the first instance, the question is yes or no. Will these be the rules? And if you're a Green Party member and you've aligned with Democrats, and Democrats are the majority and they wrote the rules, you still have to ask yourself, am I being true to how I campaigned for office if there are things in here in this set of rules that I disagree with, like the fact that it perpetuates the system under which only the two major parties get to parcel out the committee seats? I vehemently object to that. All right, then, vote no. Now, yes wins, and it's time to assign you to committee. And the Democrats say, hey, I thought you were with us, and then vote one, you're not. So guess what? Go see the other guys and see if you can get a slice of their minority pie.
Of course, in theory, the Democrats could say, yeah, I understand that you vote against us every time, but you're still with us, therefore we will reward you. I mean,
sure,
that's not realistic nor, frankly, smart by Democrats or them. Look, you said it, and this was your tweet. Yes or no ends up being the question for everybody. There's no third party yes or no. You're in the yes party or the no party when it comes to the vote. I guess you could abstain. You could be in the abstain party too, I suppose.
Right, and then they abstain.
Then why be there?
Right. I'm already abstaining from every vote in Congress. Exactly. I didn't need to spend all this money to abstain. Yeah, it's a huge logistical problem. You can have that kind of voting system. Yes, and as a matter of fact, I want to note for you, Bill says that in Maine they're going to have a ranked choice referendum this time. Yeah, will we, should we develop? I don't know what the referendum is going to say. It's certainly not going to outline the system. It's going to say, should we try to develop one to prevent the idea being, oh my God, Paul LePage, nightmare. We can't have this happen anymore. Maybe we should go to some kind of ranked choice voting so that we don't get idiots like this anymore, and more people are, and that makes a certain amount of sense. More people would have been happy with a different choice, but that's not the legislature.
I respect that, and I respect why LePage has triggered this. Here's the thing that I don't get: we have primaries. Look, if you really want to change the system, go take over one of the two parties, because you know what? In order to win the general election, you're going to have to win those people anyway.
That's true.
I just don't get that. To me, look, Bernie won 43% of the vote.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. It was a remarkable performance.
Mm-hmm.
And he had $200 million, and he fought like hell. You know what? If Bernie tapped somebody to be his successor to run again in 4 years against Hillary, or in 8 years as a new candidate, if you really care about those things, the way to do it is to win inside the Democratic Party. That's really your practical option here.
Yeah. I mean,
we're out here gaming out systems of this and that, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, I guess, to really put it in a nutshell, the reason that third parties don't tend to develop in any robust way in this country is, well, one, the first past the post thing certainly doesn't help any. But even without that, it's just a matter of our concept is usually majority rules, or at least plurality rules, and that's pretty basic to us. And two, that the best way to leverage that is to team up, and so our systems require that you go out and drum up support, and that very often also means making compromises politically, morally in some cases. It all eventually settles down to giving people as stark a choice as possible. And that's, I guess, remember also, the reason, you could, I guess, theoretically, if you're a very broad-minded guy, or maybe you're into shamanistic, what was the name of the drug that they take the trips on, and you're seeing mechanical elves, you're that kind of open-minded guy, or even without that, say we come up with different ways of voting in Congress so that it isn't necessarily, because you can structure things so that it's not exactly yes-no, although every individual vote ends up being yes-no. But you can vote strategically if you know there's a series of yes or no votes that all add up to something a little bit different.
Yes on one thing, as long as somebody else says, so as long as my amendment gets passed, I guess, and then we get to a final.
You can do things like that, but the floor leaders know that ultimately they do best breaking things down into as stark a question as possible, with us or against us style of questions. And they'll do that on the floor and in committees, and they do it in elections, and they do it everywhere because, facing a large body of electors, that's just the way it works. I mean, it's just the way to make things simple enough to communicate on a mass level. It would be ridiculous. I mean, I'm just trying to think of how do you even do it? Like, if you're for low taxes, vote for me. Unless if you're for low sales taxes, but not necessarily low income taxes, vote for my friend. But you get the point. The idea. Well, wait a minute. What? What are you talking about? Are you for low taxes or not? I mean, I'm for lower income taxes, but I don't necessarily disagree with, say, this list of user fees. What? Help. How do I? And then you're going to hand people ballots and say, there you go, rank them 1 through 5. They're going to hand you what they get now, bullet votes. People who just say 1 and hand it in. And you say, don't forget that if your first preference doesn't win, you're not going to have any hand in deciding, yeah, I know. He's going to win. Believe me, he's winning bigly in everything. Here's my one. Even where you have things like voting for city council, a 5-seat city council, and you're allowed to vote for up to 3 candidates, or for as many as you like. In some places, they will do that. And people who are hardcore supporters of one or another, they're usually encouraged bullet vote. It's like, withhold your support from everybody else but me. And they do that. And there's no telling what people are going to do when they hand in incomplete ranked preference voting. We know what the computers are going to do with it. But with the first time those votes come in and it's disastrous because you don't know what to do with people's preferences when they bullet vote, and you end up getting a result people don't like, and people say, this was supposed to be a solution for this. This is crap. Well, you screwed it up. You voted like an idiot. You were supposed to put 1 through 5. And you just put 1. I didn't know my vote would make a difference. Well, yeah, but you all did this. Yeah, but 1 vote, it's no kind of solution. It's a great thing in a small group where you tell 10 people, listen, you have to hand in a ballot filled out 1 through 5. What if I don't? Well, then you won't be included in the results unless you happen to vote for the guy who wins. After that, you have no say. Well, I think the other 4 suck, so I don't care. I don't want to have a hand in voting for any of the rest of them. All right, fine. And when you find that 90% of the voters feel the same way, you ask, what the hell are we even doing this for? I don't know. Anyway, I just realized that we've gone well past our time here, and it's time for our outro music. And well past that, as a matter of fact, I didn't turn on my alarm. So, okay. As it turns out, we are off the air live anyway, so it doesn't make that much of a difference. But at least it means that the after show is coming up and is already beginning for those of you who were listening to the show live. If you're still listening to this, that means you're listening to the podcast. I recommend that you go back and find out what they were doing on the after show and catch up on all of those fantastic stories that I didn't get a chance to introduce to you if you were listening live. But since you're not, let's take the opportunity to finish this as professionally as possible at this point. What's up on Metaphor Monday on the after show, which has already begun? Well, I'll tell you. U.S. lawmakers condemn a Pentagon effort to recover enlistment bonuses from California National Guard Iraq war veterans, as they should. This was a tremendous story brought to my attention by Kate Sherrill. Thankfully, the guys on the after show will be picking this up. A Virginia sheriff contending as a Republican nominee for a U.S. House seat says, hey, most people shot by police are on their way to jail anyway. Can you imagine that? I had some things to say about that one, too. And tribal leaders want to know why a pregnant Washington state woman was shot and killed by King County Sheriff's deputies during a wellness check on tribal land. What's up for the last half? Well, they'll be reporting to companies like Wells Fargo, who ignore their whistleblowers, do so at their own peril. And documentary film producer and director Robert Greenwald offers a personal remembrance of Tom Hayden. Excellent. All that, plus the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast Community Calendar,
Radio,
and more
on networksradio.com.
On the After Show with Lincoln Justice.
You have been listening to the
Kagro
in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Those of you listening on podcast, please forgive the unprofessionalism this morning. I did not have my usual alarm set for my 10:57 lookout point, and I evented out, as they call it, on the other side, on the technical end where Justice is working things. So sorry. We'll be back tomorrow.